others are getting harassed. Yes.
Where are you from?
I'm from Sonoma, California.
All right.
4.5 years of trying to protect my daughter
Yep.
in Napa County Family Court.
What's your daughter's name?
My daughter's name is Sophie.
Okay.
I love her. She's 9 years old. I miss her very much.
I wanted to give a
Mo made it. Hi,
How you
doctor.
doing? Here, you want one of these? You want one of these? This is a brand new book that we just put out on this.
Oh yeah.
To become detectives, you've got to become investigative reporters. You've got to ask, why is this happening? How is this happening? Who is making this happening? What are the results? Why do we have an adverse childhood incident study that says 22% of children in that study were sexually abused? Why are we having these studies that say the consequences of child abuse are long and manifold and reach into the end of people's lives with illnesses and problems and relationships and work problems? It is an epidemic, and we're not dealing with it. We're not dealing with it from a public health point of view, nor are we dealing with it from a criminal justice or a civil justice point of view. So we have mothers here like Amy Lichtenberg and Katie Tagle who went for help, and their children were murdered. They were turned down. I have to say the name of Amy Castillo here in Silver Spring, who turned to a judge in Maryland for help. Her 3 children were killed 2 years ago. I have to also mention the name of Crystal Strelioff, who just got out of jail for trying to protect her 2 children in California from substantiated sexual abuse. These stories need to be heard. They need to be told. And the people who have refused to believe what's happening have to actually face this truth and get the truth out so that it's not a dirty little secret, a silence that nobody wants to uncover. So please, talk to the people here. Find out what's going on. Break the silence. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody for coming. And many of you and most of the world don't realize the potency of our holding this particular vigil on Mother's Day. In 1870, Julia Ward Howe issued her Mother's Day proclamation in response to the Franco-Prussian War. She called for women to rise up and oppose war in all its forms, attempting to gather women together across national lines to recognize what we hold in common above what divides us, and to commit to finding peaceful resolutions to conflicts. On a personal level, Julia's husband, Samuel, believed that married women should not have a life outside the home, that they should support their husbands, that they should not speak publicly or be active in the causes of the day. My ancestor's diary speaks of a violent marriage where Samuel controlled, resented, and mismanaged the inheritance her father left her. They considered divorce several times. Julia Ward Howe stayed in her violent marriage because she loved him, and in part because she threatened to keep her from her children. He threatened to keep her from her children if she divorced him. Hello? Okay, we'll try this one. Julia Ward Howe considered divorce several times. She stayed in her violent, abusive marriage in part because she loved him and in part because he threatened to keep her from her children if she divorced him, which was both the legal standard and the common practice at the time. Here we stand in front of the White House 140 years later, and women like Julia Ward Howe face similar circumstances in court. You are losing your children in court to violent, abusive men. But today marks a turning point. Mothers are here from all over the United States, California, Indiana, Massachusetts, North Carolina, and beyond. Pennsylvania, New York,
Utah.
Utah, Ohio, Virginia, Maryland,
International. Worldwide.
Tel Aviv. So this is a national and an international epidemic, and women are here joining their voices together to no longer be silent and ostracized in your individual courtrooms, but we are building a movement, and you all are here and making that possible. So without further ado, I want to say Julia Ward Howe would be very, very proud of everyone here today. We're going to hear from a few mothers who have very courageously agreed to share their stories. And first up is a local mom who many of you know, Mildred Muhammad.
Yeah.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I always start off in the name of God because if it wasn't for Him, I would not be here today. We stand together today as mothers who are crying out for justice. Our spirits are troubled because what is happening to our children. We stand together seeking justice for our lost children. Lost in the sense of our children being taken away from nurturing, loving mothers only to be placed within a home where they are suffering molestation, sexual assault, and ultimate death. It is done under the pretense of helping keep the family together. If true evidence is presented that the child will suffer any type of abuse if given over to the father, then the child should remain with the mother. However, that is not the case. Abuse is present and still the children is given over to the abuser. If and when the child is returned to the mother, the child is confused, innocence gone, emotionally destroyed, and set on an unhealthy path because those who could have prevented this tragedy didn't do anything to stop it. They stood by as the child suffered an unimaginable ordeal that they themselves would not be found in. Children are being kidnapped, mutilated, and killed, all because the abuser decided to punish the mother for bringing him to court to seek justice. Children are used as pawns when the abuser knows the importance of the children to the mother. They are mothers from all backgrounds, legal professionals, political, teachers, medical professionals, moms who participate in after-school activities, stay-at-home moms, who fight the court for the welfare of their children, mothers who will not give up and pray for justice, and those mothers who have made the ultimate sacrifice to go underground to protect their children. We are from all religions, all races, and all nationalities. We are one today. How long do our children have to suffer before justice prevails? How long do mothers have to witness their children being taken to be abused by their fathers? How long does this type of abuse by the court system continue? How long will good men stand around and do nothing? Why does it take this kind of rally for this nation to understand we are in trouble? If the children are our future, what type of emotional pain are we allowing them to move forward within our society? John Ali Muhammad, the DC sniper, was my ex-husband. He kidnapped our children and took them to Antigua for 18 months without my knowledge. I went to the FBI for help because taking children out of the country without consent is a federal offense. I told them he was looking for me to kill me. They said, well, Miss Muhammad, since we know he's looking for you, we're going to put you in the middle of a parking lot and use you as a decoy. This will lure him out. I said, excuse me, it's going to be a headshot. I had a restraining order against him because of domestic violence. I followed the law. However, the Tacoma Police Department failed to put his name in the National Crime Information Center because they failed to do their job. 2 years before the shootings, each time John was stopped during the shootings, his record came back clean. There was a sheriff in Maryland that put and found the restraining order and put it in the NCIC long enough for him to have evidence brought against him for prosecution. Had it not been for my restraining order, they would not have had nothing to hold him on, nor would they have had to they would have had to set him free. When his case was brought to trial for the random shootings in the D.C. metro area, the judge would not allow the crimes he committed against me and my children in the trial. The laws are not strong enough against domestic violence to hold anyone for an extended period of time. Law enforcement and those close to the case have and are stating I was the intended target. The taking of innocent lives randomly was to hide my murder so he could come in as the grieving father to get custody of our children. It was a domestic violence child custody issue. My spirit is crying out for justice. Whether you live in an abusive household or not, my case illustrates how this crisis in our courts affects our entire community and nation. This is a public health issue. Everyone should work with us to demand justice. We need justice. And remember, justice will prevail. If not by man's law, then by God's law. To every woman who is a mother, wants to be a mother, especially for those mothers who have lost their children to death, kidnapping, and the court system, happy Mother's Day. Just because your children are not with you doesn't mean you are not a mother. Always, always remember that. God loves you.
Yeah. God bless you.
Thank you, Mildred. Now we're going to hear from Amy Lichtenberg, who is a very courageous mom from Leroy, Illinois. Some of you may have seen her last month on the Dr. Phil show. Amy.
I wish I had more time to tell you about my boys, Duncan and Jack. They were my whole world, and they continue to be. That is why I'm here. There is so much more I would like to share with you about how the family court system failed Duncan and Jack. However, due to time restraints, I will sum it up the best I can. I had an order of protection against my ex, which blanketed Duncan and Jack, because my ex had threatened on several occasions that he was going to hurt me like I hurt him and make me pay for taking the boys and leaving him. He violated that order of protection 57 times and only received one conviction for phone harassment. My ex had supervised visits at the State Visitation Center in Bloomington, Illinois. During this time, he raised many red flags with the staff on duty by trying to control every aspect of the visit, being non-compliant, confrontational with the staff, and finally, he called the director and threatened to commit suicide one day when he didn't get his way in court. All of these episodes were documented and reported to the judge. The only way the visitation center would reinstate his supervised visits is if my ex incurred the cost for a licensed clinical psychiatrist to monitor each and every one of the visits with the boys. Due to the fact that my ex did not like having to pay someone, he protested until the judge gave him unsupervised visits. After being on his best behavior for 1 month, my ex pleaded with the judge to grant him unsupervised visits. So after the judge reviewed countless documented concerns from my monitor about my ex's erotic behavior, and only 4 supervised visits later, the judge felt my ex was competent enough to have unsupervised visits. I believe this is the day the judge gave Duncan and Jack their death sentence. 6 overnight visits later, on March 8th, my ex failed to return Duncan and Jack to me at the scheduled time. 3 weeks later, after searching relentlessly for them, my babies were found in the back seat of my ex's car in a remote part of Putnam County in Illinois. My ex had drugged them with his prescribed antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, and he stabbed my youngest, Jack. My ex, being the coward he was, took his own life. My boys were only 7 and 9. It's only been 1 year since this has happened. I followed all the rules set for me by the court, and it landed my babies in the cemetery. My boys, Duncan and Jack, no longer have a voice. And that is why I am here to tell their story and let you know how ultimately the family court system failed us. My goal is to make sure this never happens to another child again. Every breath I take, every minute of the day, there's not 1 second of the day I don't think of them. and I will fight till the end. It's the last thing I do to make sure that their deaths were not in vain. Every day I hope to wake up from this nightmare, but then I realize this nightmare is my life.
That's right. Thank you.
And next, we are going to hear from another courageous mother, Cherish Lewis, who's here with us from Ohio.
My name is Cherish Lewis from Southern Ohio, and I want to start off by saying Happy Mother's Day. I was hit by a drunk driver. And Jalen was born micro-preemie, and because of this, she had many health issues that required 5 different weekly in-home physician-ordered therapies and treatments. After spending nearly 5 months on life support, myself and my family had to be trained on how to properly care for her before we were even allowed to bring her home
Kathleen.
to the hospital.
Closer to you. Closer.
Judge Frederick Rowe III, a traveling judge out of Meigs County, heard testimony from Jalen's MRDD specialist that Jalen's father, Stephen Rice, had refused to learn how to properly care for Jalen. Judge Crowe heard testimony from family that Stephen Rice was discharged from the military for substance abuse, and Judge Crowe also heard testimony from one of Stephen Rice's relatives that he had sexually abused a 4-year-old child. Judge Crowe ordered that my daughter go with Stephen Rice out of state for 6 months unsupervised when she was only 3 years old. When Jalen was returned to me, she had black eye, bruising around her ear and on her neck, fingerprint bruising around her wrist, and what was described as cigarette burns as well as bruises on the insides of her thighs. She had bruising and lacerations on her back, and she had various injuries to her genitalia. I took Jalen to the hospital within minutes of her return, where she disclosed physical and sexual abuse. And Judge Crowe heard testimony from a deputy sheriff who witnessed these injuries at the hospital, and he stated that her injuries were not consistent with a fall, like her father had said, but was from human contact. A children's service investigator who was also present provided testimony that physical abuse was indicated and noted that serious concerns for sexual abuse. Children's Services recommended supervised visitation. The guardian ad litem testified that Jalen reported to her that she was sexually abused and demonstrated on a doll how that she was sexually abused, and she named her father, Stephen Rice, as the perpetrator. The guardian ad litem testified to the judge that she believed Jalen, and then she described why that she believed her. And Judge Crowe ignored all of the evidence in the testimony, and he granted Stephen Rice custody and sent my baby with him out of state for another 3 months. However, Judge Crowe was overturned by the 4th District Court of Appeals for abusing his discretion and not properly considering the weight of the evidence in determining the best interests of the child. When Jalen was returned, she complained of extreme genital pain, and I immediately took her to the hospital again, and sexual abuse was reported. On August the 12th, 2008, Children's Services substantiated that Jalen was sexually abused and named Stephen Rice as the alleged offender. We were back in court on July 24th for a hearing, and Judge Crowe denied me a continuance that I had asked for based on the fact that I had found out that my attorney had represented Stephen Rice in a prior sexual abuse case against another minor child. Judge Crowe forced me to move forward without counsel. Judge Crowe denied my pleas for him to hear the evidence and ordered me to turn my baby over immediately at the courthouse to Stephen Rice. When I did not turn her over in order to protect her, I was remanded to jail, where I remained for 8 months, while my daughter was in hiding for her safety. This lasted until March 11th, 2010, when the 4th District Court of Appeals reversed Judge Crowe's decision yet again, citing his abuse of discretion and considerable prejudice towards me, and ordered my immediate release from jail. On March the 30th, Judge Crowe ordered that I appear in court and bring my daughter with me. He ordered that if I did not appear, that I would go back to jail. I was hoping and praying that the reason that he wanted me to bring Jalen was so that he can make sure that she was safe and healthy. So Jalen and I went to court that day. However, that was not the case. What was supposed to be just an ordinary status conference where no motions were set to be heard turned out to be the hardest and saddest day of my life. Despite my attorney's attempts to inform Judge Crow of new evidence of sexual abuse to my little girl, and despite their objections, Judge Crow decided to grant Stephen Rice temporary custody and ordered my helpless 5-year-old daughter to be handed over immediately, not even allowing me to explain to her what was happening. And scared and alone and in danger, my Jalen is still with her father today.
No fear, mothers are here. We have the power. We all care for the children. We love the children. This gotta stop, and it will stop. There is many people that love children. This is a crime against humanity. There is women, there is men, there is children. We will stop this. No more deaths. No more abuse. We gotta make a point. And every day until this is stopped.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where is Connie Valentine?
Over here.
Connie is, everybody needs to acknowledge and appreciate Connie Valentine, who is the brainchild behind
Brainchild.
Mothers.
Nice to meet you, Jay.
What are you doing here?
I'm here because mothers across the country are losing custody of their children. When a child tells them that they've been abused by their fathers, they tell their teacher, they tell their mother, and they decide the mother wants to protect them. They go to court to protect the child, and then very shortly after, that child is taken from their protective mother and placed in the home of their abusive father.
Why would they do that?
Well, I believe that judges are getting it wrong. They aren't getting enough information. There's a bias in court in favor of fathers. There's parental alienation that's being used. They believe that the child is being coached.
I see. Well, what can I do for you as a private citizen? What do you want me to do?
I'm hoping that everyone who understands this story will look at what legislation is coming. They will contact their representatives, both local and at the federal level, and ask for judicial review. Ask that we begin to look at our laws and how we are protecting our children. This is my civil rights. This is my child's human and civil rights to be protected. I want my child to be heard in court. I want to be heard in court.
But
I'm Kathy Lee Schulp from Massachusetts, Montgomery actually. I'm here because the court took my 4-year-old precious little firstborn son and gave him into the total custody of his molester father. My son is a prisoner of the court and of his abuser, his abusive father and his abusive aunt. I am here because the cottage industry built up around the court system is fleecing protective mothers of their wealth, impoverishing us, and disenabling us to fight back. I'm here to ask President Obama and the First Lady for a grand jury investigation of corrupt family courts. The judge that sent my son to hell was removed from the bench for her heinous decision through letters of complaint to the Commission on Judicial Conduct. We are asking the President for a congressional hearing on family court abuses and corruption. A complete investigation by the President to be ordered, requesting that the United States Attorney General investigate family court policies, practices, and procedures in California, New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Hawaii, states from which advocacy organizations receive an unusually high number of complaints that children are ordered to live with batterers and molesters, as in my own case. My son disclosed sexual abuse at the age of 2.5. We fled to a domestic violence shelter on legal advice. My ex-husband handed me divorce papers while we were in the shelter for blowing the whistle on his pedophile activities.
I ask you, who can we go to? Is it Congress? Is it the president? Is it media?
I think the Congress has to take some action.
Okay,
We want congressional hearings.
that's what we're working
And
on.
I think there's been, probably the person that you ought to contact is Susan Davis from California.
Okay.
She is a person that's been very effective at working women's issues
Okay.
in the military.
All right.
That's who
We've,
I would go
we've been given the name Carolyn Maloney as well. Do you know her?
Yeah, Carolyn
She did
Maloney
human
is another
trafficking.
person who would be
New York.
interested in an issue like. But they're aware of this issue. I can
They are,
assure you.
okay.
I know they are.
Yep.
Revoke any funds from child support enforcement for states that don't pass laws to disconnect child support from the amount of time a child spends in residency with the parent. Because it makes a kid into a financial commodity.
I'm here for the children and the women who are raped through the courts, by the courts, and for the monetary gain of the courts. I'm here to stop the abuse, the court-sanctioned abuse of women and children. And I'm here to demand that the U.S. government do formal investigations into the family and civil court systems of the United States that predicate abuse and protect judges who predicate abuse.
Got that on the way over, and I said my observation was that quite frequently the issue is they don't want to pay child support any longer.
That's right, General. You know,
You and the one is too young to be demonstrating.
but her mother couldn't come without her.
Are you the mother?
I am the mom. I am the mom, Kara Wilson. Pleasure to meet you.
I think that's pink, so it must be. Well, I would like to think I'm smart enough to be in the service today. As I look at all the equipment they use today, I'm not sure I am.
What branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Air Force.
Air Force?
I was in the comptroller field, the same as her father.
Oh, really?
And
Sometimes I think the issue is more
Those things that they advertise at Christmas.
the spouse doesn't want to make child support payments, and it is a way of getting out from under
We
them.
hear your cries, even if the judges don't.
Which is a short-sighted thing, because the expense goes on, whether you're paying child support or whether you're providing it.
well, you're right, General. I'm in favor of repeal of the Bradley Amendment because it just simply gives fathers financial incentive to rip children away from mothers. That seems to be what's happening now. They're building more and more women's prisons, and they're throwing we mothers in jail for non-payment of child support. I pay my ex-husband child support to abuse our child.
Well, that was very unfortunate. How old is your child?
He turned 8 last September. I haven't seen him in 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
We have his picture, but
It's
I
a
think
sad
it's on his
situation.
car, right?
Very sorry.
Prior to that, they had us in supervised visits for 3 years. I saw him 2 hours a week, and I had to pay mightily to see him.
Yeah. Okay.
What
Well,
can
I
be
just
done?
wanted to let you know that this is an issue that we're concerned about, and we'll continue to be concerned about it. So,
how about you,
The
Alicia?
children are suffering every moment, and they cannot protect themselves. So they need these bigger people because they don't have even legal rights. They cannot have a voice in the courts. So we have to have that in mind every moment and speak out for them, and make every possible effort because this is a crime against humanity. If we don't do it, who will do it? The children are in great need.
That's right.
Imagine yourself in this position, being abused every day
And not having
and having hopeless opportunities.
But not just your children, all children, right?
All the children.
Yeah.
And just remember,
As long as there's money involved, any child can be a target.
We're their first line of defense. You know, those who were sworn to uphold the law, and those that were actually even they took an oath to protect the nation's people. They're failing. They're failing miserably, and we're picking up the shattered pieces of our fragmented selves. Like doctors wouldn't allow evidence, and they stole my children. And I and again, 7 years. Absolutely. And then it's too late. We lost our children. They're damaged. They're fragmented, and we're lost. They're lost. It's America's undeclared war against the nation's children.
The Air Force, yeah. Go Air Force.
So,
all right.
Protect the children.
I did 10 years.
You guys are doing a wonderful job. Yeah, water. Water, yes. Oh, they're adorable.
Aren't we allowed to film people if they're here? She said don't film me. So
I think you would have to get a release.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use it for anything except for myself. Can I film you?
In cases of domestic violence, sexual abuse, we're victims, and you know, we all have different stories.
Kids were taken away and given to abusive dads mostly.
Yeah, and
We have a big banner coming.
yeah, they're the identified abusers. They've identified their abuser, whether it be like my children were sexually abused by their father. And CPS, which is Child Protective Services, indicated it and suggested that the children come with me. And so after 7 years of fighting, they finally gave me my children back. But
After
7
7
years of
years.
abuse.
Yeah.
Sexual abuse, physical
didn't take
abuse.
into
And they're
account that.
boys. They're little boys. And their father's a pilot. So my advice to you ladies, first of all, if you are in any kind of, if you get red flags that you have an abusive relationship, he's controlling, he isolates you, he, like, right down to the clothes you wear or making nasty comments about yourself.
Controlling
Those are red flags. Leave. If you end up getting pregnant and you're not married, don't put the father on the birth certificate, for one. And then try and see if he wouldn't sign sole custody over to you right away. Now, granted, he could still fight for it down the road, but at least you're free to move around the country. Because you couldn't even move into the next county if an abuser gets a hold of you and you have a child with them.
Tell me who you are and why you came.
Yeah, my name is Alicia Campos, and I came here because I'm a mother and I'm trying to protect my child who is in the custody of the person that admitted sexual abuse, and the courts are accepting therapies that in one single miracle therapy cured him. The child went in extreme fear. I didn't get any help from the courts, from my attorney, from CPS, or from Family Justice Center. And I hid with my son for a month and a half. And I was told to come back with my child to Children's Hospital and had a forensic interview. The child expressed his fear, and the district attorney sent the child in extreme fear to the father. And the police, the person that did the forensic interview, was very concerned, called CPS and called the police, and they didn't do anything. The child is there. He had expressed that he sleeps in a box, that he's afraid of the father, that he throws knives at him, And I have been for 1 year completely disconnected to him, stripped from my son, because I'm supposed to stop protecting him. The Corps are concerned of me because I protect my child. It's happy because we're letting everybody know we're doing something that can bring the attention of everybody, and so we will change things for better for our children.
That's right. So hopefully we won't have to come here in the coming years, every year, right?
It looks like a big fight.
It's a long fight.
It is.
It's a long fight, yeah. We have one mom that became an attorney and has been fighting for 40 years. And we have people from California.
What happens in your country to batterers and molesters of children?
Well, I don't think my countries right now have enough laws to deal with child molesters. And, culturally, we have some major cultural difference between the United States and my country. What we would normally call molesting here, back home, they might call it just disciplining a child.
I see. Well, molesting means sexual relations with a child.
We don't have. I don't think if we have that, it's not really documented. I don't think we have. I don't think we have a lot of child molesters. But right now, they've started, promulgating laws against child molesters. If anyone would come up, but the thing is, nobody comes up to say somebody molested me.
I see. They're afraid?
Maybe, sort of.
And what country is your country?
I'm from Nigeria.
Nigeria, wonderful.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your comments.
Do
you think mothers should be allowed to raise their children?
I think mothers should be allowed to raise their children.
Well, thank you.
I mean, especially if they are fit, and mothers should be allowed to raise if they are not on drugs, and if they are not going to be harmful to the children, their lifestyle, I think they should be allowed to raise their children.
Well, I heartily agree, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have a beautiful. Now, where are you from?
I'm originally from Egypt, but I'm an American citizen as well. I was born in Pennsylvania.
Oh, do you think that mothers should be allowed to raise their children?
I definitely think a mother should be allowed to raise her children up to a certain age. Like we discussed earlier, I am from Egypt, and the laws in Egypt say that a child, if a boy should be raised with his father, with his mother, till he's 12 years old. And I totally agree, because at that young age, I think children need, more of their mother's care and attention. And then when he's reached that age, when he's 12 years old, maybe he should be, if he wants to, he can go live with his father and, learn how to become more of a man, right? So I do think that up to a certain age, they should be raised with their mothers.
I think Egypt is very advanced in that policy.
And I also believe that especially girls should definitely live with their mothers at all times, because, they need to, pick up from their mothers. They need to learn how, to be a woman.